So hello everyone. We're going to be doing the destruction of Black civilization, great issues of erase from 4500 BC to 2000 AD. Chapter 2, Ethiopia's oldest daughter, Egypt. And we're going to be talking about two segments: the city of 100 gates, as well as Thebes and the role of religion. So, per usual, can we just start with summaries? I'll just start us off. Um, the first segment, the city of 100 gates, I kind of learned a lot about the role of Thebes and how white Westerners, Europeans, Euro Americans, whatever you want to classify them as, have done a lot of work on erasing the history of Africa, the history of Egypt. And I learned that kind of how great of a city Thebes was and what happened to it, essentially. And how there's so much history that's replaced when it comes to African history. And I think it's gotten to the point where whenever I hear the word African, I'm like, what does that even mean? What was an African? I'm pretty sure the name is something different. Yeah. And the second chapter, not chapter, the second segment, kind of just learning a bit about the role of religion in Thebes and the other great cities that Thebes was able to cultivate. Yeah, popcorn 0526.
Um, yeah, pretty much what you said. I learned just extensive history and importance that religion played a role in creating these cities. And it actually turns out that the ancient blacks, were able to create all those giant structures and whatnot because they were building these things for gods. And it reminded me, the religion section reminded me of how Yurugu, where she quotes this racist suspects saying that the blacks were doing all this stuff because they were hearing voices in their heads. Very racist propaganda. But it turns out, they were just like, that connected to the creator, and that told them to build all these structures that lasted for that are still here. And also the second bit is just how the beginning of that, how the Asians and whatnot, the whites, began to totally erase through names and through deceit as they do. Popcorn, Nanaya.
Okay. So from these two sections, what I've got, as we all kind of just said before, just echoing, um, the city of 100 Gates is where I learned like it was also known like the eternal city of the blacks, and kind of just like this. I don't know how to like maybe profound civilization, and I think in this part right here, I got to understand. I believe it's called the Thebans or Thebans, um, people of the Thebes
Yeah,
civilization.
thieves.
Thank you. And then it went on to going on to the other section. It talks about just like the Thebes and the role of religion. It took place, and it also talked a little bit about what they call spirituality. So I'm excited to get to that part of the section because I think it makes like a clear cut connection of what religion we will in the U.S. would say about religion than in this African civilization would say about religion. And then um, There was one other thing. And then it just kept going on to about the refining the where it talks about Upper and Lower Egypt. I got more information on that because I was honestly confused in the beginning a little bit of like where the borders were and who lived where and um, yeah, so that's kind of just what I got out of it. And I'm excited to just dive in more with it. And then I'm gonna popcorn to Kwaku.
For me, the City of 100 Gates, I was able to understand and really gain some insight on kind of these cities or I guess civilizations prior to ancient Egypt. That ancient Egypt wasn't, the first civilization that Black people, created many more before that. Well before Egypt became known, and Thebes and the role of religion. I really understand. It gave me perspective on the role of religion and how important religion is. Today, it's really hard for me to understand why religion is such a huge issue. Why people can't give that up. But I guess this section in particular really, religion, like it says in the code book, is a way of life, and religion in this sense was really a way of life, not just an institution. So I'm gonna go ahead and popcorn mice.
Thank you, Mize. And yeah, to summarize the city of 100 gates, I it's been echoed. I'm just echoing what's been said. It's extensive history that is so valuable to us. And I before this, my main knowledge when it comes to the idea or just the ideology of Thebes is things I hear in like Greek mythology. I used to watch like Hercules a lot, so I used to hear Thebes, 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 but I never knew that yeah, until on research to know that this is not only Black orientated, but it was the epicenter for knowledge, exchanging of knowledge. And from the second chapter, I see religion being used in a different way, almost as if just like how the governments are organizing today, like what the secular form of religion that they're trying to have today, I see its roots in this research. Well, when I'm reading the research, I see its roots in what they're trying to achieve here today, here. And yeah, that disassociation that they were able to create is very painful. But yeah, it's Theobald. Just that name, Theobald. I remember this thinking it was the most furthest removed thing that could sound African or anything, let alone be something that relates to Black intellects. But yeah, I really enjoyed reading this because it just gave me like a really good, like beautiful visions of like maybe past lives or places I would want to, or even venture to, or nomadically travel to educate myself, just like how Mali Timbuktu is used. Yeah. Believe Benjamin.
Yeah, what a rich reading. Just the power of finding out that, reinforcing rather that we were um, first builders of the earliest civilization. Um, just to really internalize the fact that city of Thebes was the center of all civilization, where it all started, where it all began, is just mind blowing. And what stood out for me was the importance of names. What, like the Western thing is, well, what's in a name? What does it matter? If it sounds good, it's good. No, because it's our identity. And it talked about the names of the cities and how Africa got its name and how it's important to know who you are. by your names. And I think that applies to us as individuals as well. Um, and that's why, I noticed that we're doing some name changes here in this group, which is good. Uh, and then just how, that one last thing, how their written records were done with indestructible architecture, and more so than the written word at the beginning, which says a lot that we had so much spirituality and ability to live, and knowledge to live in harmony, that maybe they didn't have the need to write stuff down. And very interesting how they believed in immortality and everything. And this, and I won't belabor this, but like the difference between this society and that society was that they put spirituality and morality first. And because of that, that motivated them to invent science, mathematics, and architecture, because of their deep respect for God and for spirituality. And which was the beautiful thing that got civilization up and running. But at the same time, it's like their Achilles heel, because when the Northerners got a hold of the information and the science and the technology and the weapons, they were able to use it and disregarded the morality and the spirituality. They were they were able to catch them off guard and do things that were unfathomable, just unthinkable, to conquer them. So yeah, we'll probably get more into that later.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for sharing. I wanted to start us off by, because the city of 100 gates is mostly about Thebes, and we've been learning about Thebes. And I thought it'd be a good idea to open us up with a brief history of Thebes, and that can be found on page 87 on the physical book. Maybe the same page on the PDF copy, I'm not sure. But it reads, the history of Black Africa might well begin at Thebes, for this was truly the eternal city of the Blacks that presented the most compelling evidence that they were the builders of the earliest civilization in Kim, later called Egypt, as well as a great civilization in the south. The foundation of Thebes, like the Black state of which it was the center, goes back so far in prehistory that not even a general Stone Age period can be suggested. So this is what Black African people were doing thousands of years ago. And this information will, at the moment, it's definitely not in the heads of 1 million Black people right now. It's probably in the heads of probably 35,000 Black people probably know about Thebes. And this is unfortunate because I checked the stats for social media to see how many Black people use Facebook, and millions of Black people use Facebook, and millions of Black people use Facebook to share videos of themselves and other people dancing. So it's unfortunate how with the technology that we have now, we're not really doing much with it that's constructive. Our ancient African ancestors were able to, someone mentioned that they used the term indestructible art they were able to carve monuments and temples and pyramids and all types of different arts and carvings throughout tombs, caves, and side pyramids. And that lasted thousands of years. I wonder what this generation will cultivate that will last thousands of years. Um, I was just thinking about how in like 30, 50 years from now, all these rappers and people who are idolized now would be old people, like elderly people, and then who the generation loses. There's no more artists who are like fighting for justice. There's no more artists who are like speaking what reality is, like Nina Simone, talking about, hey, black people are being killed every second. It's all we should be talking about. Black people being decimated all across the planet, by non-white people and white people working collectively to like maintain white supremacy, also known as the status quo. I know people like using that word, status quo, and that's just another word for white supremacy. What are your thoughts about some of the things I'm saying, and also like the history of Thebes, the eternal city of the blacks? They say this place was talked about like it was one of the most amazing places on planet Earth, and the whites, racist, white supremacists, they worked hard to say that this is not, black people didn't build this. They went as far as to say that white Africans were there first and they were building up Egypt and building up Thebes. So this place is very important to black people and to the white supremacists and to the Asian invaders as well. So curious to see your thoughts.
One of the things that I noticed, like you brought up, was the confusion that white supremacists placed specifically on African history. Not being very clear about who was inhabiting those lands, where those people came from, who built those great civilizations. That was kind of a big theme in this chapter for me that I noticed throughout or this section, and really how that confusion has not really been cleared up in large parts, that even today some experts are still, I don't know whether or not for sure, but they could still be using this kind of logic that white Africans were inhabiting these lands and they were the ones that built it, to still push that narrative that Black people can't create anything. Black people have never created anything. I wanted to read this from page 88. It says, I have said that the confusion in African history did not develop accidentally or because of a long series of unfortunate circumstances. The confusion seems to have been deliberately contrived. All specialists on ancient Egypt whose works we have examined were quite familiar with all the facts presented here. I present nothing here that would be new to them, for so much of it is their own findings. So, I mean, if the white supremacists, if Black people were, if the white supremacists didn't confuse history, and Black people were able to understand that, that they even if they didn't, even if they aren't credited with Egypt, there's still civilizations that stood before Egypt, called Thebes and the likes. That if they created those civilizations, then it would automatically take them to the conclusion that they had to have built Egypt. So, that kind of logic and understanding, I don't know what kind of power that would have on Black people as a collective.
I think that's a fantastic point that you make there. Just to like further add to what you're saying, give a little more context and reading page 88, just at the bottom, it talks about Herodotus and how even he had made mention of the fact that he had gained some of his information and knowledge from Egypt, but they still credit him as the father of knowledge, despite him being very clear where received his information from. Let's see if I can find it. They eagerly quote the ancient historians as first-line authorities, but attack them wherever their records upset the premises upon which modern racism is built. In such cases, the Western scholar feels so absolute and infallible in his wealth-centered power and control over science and education that on those points he does not choose to accept. He will dismiss the father of history with here Herodotus must be read with caution. He is known to have made errors. He did not travel very much in Africa, or it is very likely that Diodorus was relying on oral tradition here, or they may have confused the Greek Ethiopia, which means the Black Land, with Kem, Egypt, which also means the Black Land. For Pliny suggests that in the case of the Egypt, black refers to the soil rather than the people, and so it goes. Just that short statement there just allows me to know even the miscommunication that's adopted by Europeans. That's what goes down in history for us, like calling it Egypt versus Kemet, or not even having that association. I think the terminology association is very important, especially when reading this chapter of the City of a Thousand Gates, because this information that I'm hearing and I've learned about thieves today, the ideology is not new to me. The concepts of academia are not new to me. It feels so familiar, yet we're so disenfranchised when it comes to the association of Africa, Africans, and having any sense of pride with any of those two connections. Um, Ken, if somebody told me I had Kemetic skin versus, oh, you have skin like tar, but Ken is a chemist, is based in chemistry. It's a word that I didn't think I could do well in chemistry, so I didn't even bother scratching my head there. Yet if I'd known it had ancestral or land connection to it, in terms of heritage, or it being African, I would have definitely felt like this is something I could conquer, be in, and do. And just this association that the European have successfully been able to disassociate ourselves with is just, it shows why chapters like this are important.
Yeah, I think it's just it's really important to know the names of things besides it's just being like Africa or Egypt, because I'm sure this is our first time being introduced to the term thieves in Norway. I mean Noah, which is two of the most ancient black cities that there were, and I really want to just show the significance of just the root of blackness and what black people should know about black people, not to develop any pride, but just to understand that like everything that currently the so-called civilization is just it's all like a stolen pirated version of what black people were doing. And this is from 93, where Chancellor Williams says Diodorus, affirming that the Thebans were the oldest first men on earth according to the tradition, and that they also originated the systems of philosophy and astrology. We need not be as much concerned about their antiquity, which was already well established, as we are about the loss of so much of the additional evidence concerning the development of philosophy and the beginning of the space science of astrology. So literally black people originated knowledge. Without black people there would be no knowledge. It's just that racist man or racist woman have done an impeccable job of menticizing us and plagiarizing our knowledge and then complicating it with their words to the point that we can't even understand it, to the point where black people like Mary like don't even attempt to understand something like chemistry because of the mental side and because of white supremacy.
Yeah, thanks everyone for sharing. And I agree that there's a lot of confusion that is manifested because of racism, white supremacy. Um, and there's so much knowledge hidden from Black people, and it's so intentional as well. On page 88, I believe I read how the uh, the dynasties, the traditional African traditional lineage systems were matrilineal in character. It was made patrilineal after Asian conquest or the Great Egyptian Transformation. So to me, both of those things mean when other people got involved. So when Asians started invading and making their rhetoric and their politics kind of the norm, and Thebes, Norway, won't say the two names that they call them by. So this is just something that I had not known about. The fact that there were so many dynasties and they, existed. I want to say matriarchal, if if I understand correctly from what I had read. And it's unfortunate that a lot of Black people are unaware that we are the originators of not only philosophy and astronomy, but also like mathematics. Um, a lot of technological advances wouldn't be possible without Black people. For example, an African American was the first person to like create video game cartridges that allowed people to start gaming in their houses. Let me bring up the guy's name right now. But I just learned this recently. Just 29 years old, and I'm learning about the person who made it possible for me to play video games in my home is a Black male. The person who spawned the creation of Sony, Xbox, and Nintendo, a Black male. Very, very, very interesting. And it's just knowledge that's hidden. Fortunately, I can't find the post that I saved. I'm not gonna waste any more time on it. But does anyone have anything else that they wanted to talk about from the City of 100 Gates? If not,
Yeah, I wanted to add that I liked his suggestions for areas of field of study. He placed a lot of importance on, finding those African names and understanding their meanings. He even goes as far as to say that, understanding those ancient names and finding their meanings would spearhead a real Black revolution. And I don't know, how did you guys feel about that? How do you guys feel about that statement? Like if we actually understood all of the African names and their origins, do you think it has the possibility to start a revolution?
I would say it would be of constructive value to perhaps use those names, know those names. Um, but as for so-called revolution, I don't think it would do that. But could it be a constructive value? Yes, possibly. So
I would agree. I think it would go a long way to, eliminating a lot of confusion if people actually understood those names.
I think it would be an excellent start for change, seeing as though they contrived, what did he say here? The confusion seems to have been deliberately contrived. And it's real. I wanted to share this too, that you know, the deeper reason that they lied, blew off the noses of the artifacts and destroyed the artifacts and the history is because they know that jet black represents God and white represents evil. They know this. And it's hard, we can't fathom that as people of color. And so this was at the very outset, this was their attempt at replacing God with themselves. And that's what people of color just cannot wrap their head around. And these white, evil white conquerors really and truly believe that. And that's what they've been perpetuating for the millennia.
Yeah, I find it interesting. A lot of the, the artifacts or whatever that they pillage from those lands. If most of them, if not all, the ones I've seen, all of their noses have been blown off. I don't think that's a coincidence at all.
But yeah, what Ben said, I agree. White people have trained non-white people and black people to worship them as gods. White people, Google a video of a white person being in Asia and see how they're treated like a god. You know, see how they're treated and worshipped by the people who they walk around. So yeah, I totally agree. White people have trained black people to worship religion, to worship any god, even the gods that we worship in our so-called churches, in our Christian churches, our Catholic churches. We're worshiping a white conception of God. When you worship Jesus Christ, the image in your mind is probably white, because when you're first taught about Jesus, you're taught that he's a white person. You're taught about the white God first. And white people are very smart. They did a good job at replacing black people's true history with sadness and despair and just embarrassments. Just a long list of embarrassments, you know. I was telling Mary, if this doesn't change, if white supremacy is not replaced with justice, what's gonna happen is on the tombstone that belongs to black people, it's gonna say that black people were good for known for three things: dancing, laughing, and stealing. You know, because that's white supremacy. That's what it'll do to a people. It'll have you lost for thousands of years. Your whole people lost for thousands of years, to the point where the people who are talking about their problem are labeled insane and ignored. Labeled crazy and ignored. But yeah, totally agree. Does anyone have anything else they want to say about Thebes?
Yeah.
Wait, I just want to comment on what the sir just said. I just think that was really well said, and I think that's very possible. And this is the importance of understanding the mistakes that were made in the past in order to not make those same mistakes. But as we are seeing in 2021, victims of racism are still making the mistake of not learning that white people, racist suspects, are very dangerous, and they need to understand what they have done to them historically, because it's still happening. But we're really well said, Mr. Ann. I really appreciate that.
Agreed, most definitely.
What's your point?
The only thing I wanted to add about Thebes is just, honestly, from the information that this book contains, not only that, the visual imagery that I've been able to take in when we had done the classes. I remember Ashley had brought some amazing images of Thebes as well, and it just allowed me to see really and truly where this European system of education was modeled after. If you look at the pillars in the images, I had also did a Google search to really get into it. If you look at the pillars, you look at the monuments around it, universities now are modeled after this style of education. These temples of education is where most standard universities take their pride in aesthetic and building, and you never see this reverence being given, of course, and this disassociation coming away. But something beautiful that was said before about indestructible art is when your art is of purpose and one in same with holistic thinking and one in same science, religion, your understanding of nature is all one in the same. Your art is in that contribution. It's only in this allowed me to truly see in the system that we live in now with the structures that we have in place here. The work that we create can be almost for nothing. Even the pain, the work that comes from our pain, like as a standoff, if they do put any money towards it, it may be minimized, it may be retold in a particular way that it just goes down in history as like a fake story, as opposed to something of real substance and something that you can look back and be modeled after by the whole global society. And this is what these chapters show us, that if stay on stay on your high ground of your morals, stay on your high ground of alignment of your ancestors, and stay in purpose with what you're producing in the world, because 100 300 years from now, it's not the work that is funded by the arts communities, the white art communities that we basically minimize ourselves to get some funding that's gonna stand. It's gonna be the work that we put our whole hearts into based off the information that we know now, and combining that with ways of applying scientific knowledge, just like the gardening that's being done by Nanaya and Kweku, like putting in your own form of creativity. 10 years from now, you'll be able to see that in your garden. So yeah. About deter, I did want to also read from this part that just kind of just crystallized just the way I feel and appreciate the information that we have on Thebes. The hierarchy of deities not only included numerous lesser gods and goddesses, but also a long line of venerated former kings, queens, and ancestors. All of this not only inspired endless temple building at Thebes, but also a concentration of attaining the highest standard of excellence. This in turn called for reflective thinking, inventions, and discovery. Many of the temples what we would call colleges, as the different fields of study were temple centered. Here, scholars from foreign lands came to study, and from here, religious ideas and architectural designs spread abroad. The early Greeks and Romans eagerly copied from both, reshaped them, and made them integral parts of an original Western culture. During periods of decline or conquest, Europe and Asia seized and transported from Africa as much as the artifacts of its civilization as they could. I'll pause it there.
Thank you, Mais, for reading that. I actually had a part on that page highlighted as well. Just right above what you just read, to start it off, it said, "This belief in life after death was the great inspiration for building on so grand a scale, attempting to erect structures that would stand forever." And as you were mentioning, is just like, not only are we doing things now in our present life, but also like bringing it back to thieves, how they continue to strive for grand, or strive for things that were long lasting. Maybe it was this, because we are now in the religion part, maybe it was the spiritual bond that they had, and in this life after death. I'm not sure like what they described life after death looked like, but it doesn't really matter what it looked like. But it's just like, just knowing that was the way they moved about their lives. Or so what they were doing is like, I'm going to build this because X, Y, and Z. And I think just to apply it to now, like in present life, is that just to think about like, what are we doing that is long lasting, that will last forever, that will stand, although we are in a system of racism and white supremacy who can take it out or delete things whenever, however. But I think one of the things too is this oral communication, although it's not like for the masses, but to instill things around us, and then through our lineage as well, is just like, hey, this is something that I've learned, and keep passing it down that way. That can be long lasting. Just very interesting.
Totally agree. Very well said, Miss Nebula and Nana. Yeah. So I think could segue us into the second segment, Thebes and the role of religion. And I want to open us up by reading a little bit of the first paragraph. And I want to say some things about this, and hopefully I'll hear your thoughts as well. So, Thebes and the role of religion. The mother of cities, as it was called, was one of the chief centers of religion in Africa. The Blacks were a very religious people and had a number of religious cities, each one under the special patronage of a god, goddess, or any number of deities. The gods and goddesses of Thebes were among the most important because their city was so important. Because religion to the Africans was far more than ritual reflecting belief, but a reality reflected in their actual way of life. Religion from the earliest times became the dynamic force in the development of all major aspects of Black civilization. The belief in immortality was a simple matter, of course, and beyond the realm of debate. So this gives context to how things were back then, between 4500 BC to 2000 AD. It gives us insight to how things were, and Blacks were using religion as a energy source, as a power source. They were using it to build things. They're using it to organize. They had their goddesses and gods that were being honored and respected, and they were manifesting. They were creating, and it was a non-monogamous religion. So it had multiple gods. It wasn't just a white man in the sky with blue eyes and gold hair. It wasn't a man who sent his pale white son down to get killed by the Romans. That didn't happen. It was different, and we still have that religious aspects. Black people are very easy to control when religion is involved, and Black people were controlled via antebellum slavery, via religion, literally taught to worship the God that put them in bondage in the Bible, that they were not allowed to learn how to read, but they were allowed to listen to. Some of them were given privileges to read. One of the captives who were allowed to read happened to be Nat Turner, and he ended up leading a slave revolt, which led to hundreds of white people being killed. And I may be exaggerating that number, but it would have been good if it was 100 or so, because it's a race war happening. So yeah, I read about Thebes and the mother of cities, and I read about how Africans or Black people living in Thebes, Thebians, how their religion served a purpose, and it still had the same structure where there was a hierarchy and there was a person, a chief or a priest or someone in a high position of power who had exclusive communication with God. I always thought that was funny, even reading it now, because you go to a church and the preacher or the priest is supposed to have a special relationship with God, like separate from yours. Yours is a lesser relationship. The one that they have is better. That's why you go to their church and listen to their words, talking about your God. Very confusing, and it also made me think about the popes and how the only exclusive relationship that they actually have or anything is the children that they molest on a regular basis. So you got the Catholic Church, their popes are raping children across the world. You got popes in Spain doing the exact same thing, popes in the Vatican doing the same thing. And it's all connected to racism, white supremacy, I believe. It's a lot. So, any thoughts on the mother of cities? Any thought on how the historical foundations of religion are still pretty much the same when it comes to Black people today? They really are. You know, that is something that they will live, preach, and push on a lot of people. But because we live in a Western society where it's all performative, they don't actually practice what they believe. So you have a lot of Black people who are supposed to have a lot of faith, but they have no faith. Actually, they're just regurgitating information, and they live really hopeless lives on planet Earth until they pass away, and it's just a sad cycle. And I see religion as a long sedation. You know, the longer you're religious, the longer you'll be sleeping, and the longer you'll be fine. You know, you'll just be fine with everything because God gonna save you eventually. Eventually, maybe tomorrow. So every day is tomorrow. You know.
Yeah, well, reading this section, I really understood why, the code Neely Fuller refers to religion being the way it is, or, a way of living or how people live. Because in this section, without religion, a lot of these things wouldn't have came into existence. A lot of those buildings, a lot of the math, the arts, all that stemmed from religion. I think today, the religion being practiced by Black people has been, somewhat perverted, or they're practicing white supremacist religion. Therefore, they're not. I think the definition of religion in this section and religion today aren't the same. But religion really had a huge role, and for me, it really puts in perspective why religion is so important to Black people and African people. Without religion, they couldn't have achieved any of the things that they did achieve.
Yeah, that was both very well said. What this got me thinking about is about what we as Black people have been able to do with religion now for ourselves. And I look at the communities, and if creations of cities, not even for the sake of cities, the temple ships and the communities coming in from around the world, I don't know any religion that really pulls people in this, like that anymore, and is doing something productive other than coming together on Sunday and putting in tithe. And like there was one church that I had known that had created a supermarket in my lifetime, and I literally thought, wow, one. I sat there and I thought, wow, he's putting money together for the tithe to make a supermarket for us to be able to put money in together. But then reading this information in chapter, this is beyond just the supermarket and it just being one church that I've heard ever doing that in my lifetime. This book is trying to detail to how what they were able to do with their own interpretation of religion. And I think this is why we had to be indoctrinated, because we needed a religion that told you to sit down and turn the other cheek, be complacent, cry about it, and wait very patiently for that savior. But yeah, just to read from page 91 at the bottom, I thought it very important as well how they put leaders in power. The keepers of the temples of Thebes and elsewhere became a powerful priesthood, thus indirectly reducing the power and influence of chiefs and kings who in traditional Africa derived their real powers as the official intermediaries between the gods, sainted ancestors, and the people. If an African king or chief had any real political power, it was acquired either by virtue or his religious function, or because of the prestige of being a great general or victorious warrior. Otherwise, the council was the constitutional center of power. And I'm guessing the council also is selected or it comes together from all these different temple priesthoods and heads that they would have gone through a lifelong sense of learning to be a priesthood and be able to educate and give that information back. It just felt more wholesome. Reading this information felt more wholesome, and of course, everything could always be better in writing, or maybe it's too good to be true because I'd like to see how this was delegated or orchestrated out. But if this is what Vice Chancellor Williams is saying we were doing before European interaction, I'm just wondering how we can have enough freedom and space to get this back up and running in a set environment that is of African origin.
I also had, thank you, Mice. I also had that section highlighted, and you pretty much summed that up pretty well. That's what I had written down. And I also wrote, religion was the base of political power, which was said at the bottom of that section. And I was just thinking too, like, why do people go so hard, or why do Black people go so hard for religion? And that sentence pretty much summed it up for me, because it's like, if you go hard for religion, it's like you have some sort of power, like immediate power, because it's like, oh, when someone's having trouble, it's like they feel like not over, but on top, like, oh, just pray about it. God will bless you. Like, they're the healers and all of these things. It's very interesting though, because it's like, you really don't have any power unless the white man says you have power. Whether you're this religious person, this wonderful warrior, we have Black people going into the military now here in the States, and it's just like, they're going to war, they come back with a trophy, and that's all they get. And if they lose a life, it's like, oh, let me give your family money. So it's just very like, there's no, and then you come back and you have zero power still. So it's like you never really acquire power in the present days. But here, the African kings and chiefs had some sort of like, quote unquote, political power, depending on like their religious functions, or like even like the type of warrior they were. So it's just like correlating and making some sort of relation of where power stands and what kind of power you have.
Yeah, I wanted to add, because this is it's kind of like opposite of what we've been learning in Urugu, as far as like Platonic thought and Plato's setup, where people are given positions of power where there's like similarities, but there's also differences where a few people might know about these things, but in the African sense, like they're being shared with everyone. One thing in particular that I noticed that was different was on page 92, where on page 92 it says the state's income from religion stemmed from the requirement of sacrificial offerings from the people. This might be from 10 to 50% of what each individual produced or earned, but where the traditional constitutional law of the Black prevailed, the people willingly contributed from their means for a quite non-religious reason. The Central Treasury belonged to the people and was maintained for the people's welfare, not only for public projects, but for the relief of each and every individual in distress whose needs could not be met by his family or clan. So, I mean, we're living in, white supremacist society, and at least this isn't apparent for Black people. When we all pay taxes yearly, we don't, if we're in distress or anything, we don't receive any kind of help, or the help that's necessary, right? The constructive help that the person struggling the most needs, they don't receive that kind of help. And I think that's very different in comparison to what's going on now to what was going on back then. I think that those societies were set up differently, and religion was just, it was overall like, it was a different, it was different. I don't know how to explain it, but it's different in the sense like it was there to help people, not just give them some fake, not create a facade of, you know, be a slave now and you will be relieved of your duties in death.
This is a profound discussion. I mean, this insight that you all are expressing is cutting edge. And from what I'm gaining from this right here, right back on page 90, because religion to the Africans was far more than ritual reflecting beliefs, but a reality reflected in their actual way of life. So I am of the opinion that these people did more than believe. They knew something for a fact. It wasn't a belief. It was something that they knew was a reality. Their higher power, their connection was like I said, not a belief, but actually a knowing. Like, I know God is real. I know that these powers are there. It's not mambo jambo or voodoo or just some crazy, so far beyond what the Western mind could comprehend. And so this is what led to what I believe their excellence, their greatness, and our downfall right here in the later paragraph where it says, all of this not only inspired endless temple building at Thebes, but also a concentration on attaining the highest standard of excellence. This in turn called for reflective thinking, invention, and discovery. And that's like the biggest hidden power of Black people, like that movie Hidden Figures, where all of this high level of excellence has always been going on, even in, and like this, which leads me to the religious piece, which is very controversial because it was those religious groups during slavery that hid behind the barns and kind of adopted the Christian ideologies, and some of them, like the spiritual aspect of the religion, they understood because they already knew it. They already knew. Then it's going to talk about it later about the brotherhood of man. That was African. They already knew about forgiveness and love and sacrifice. And so when those principles came up in this new religion that was being forced down their throat, they were like, okay, we can deal with this and use this and to amalgamate, like, and they used those old Negro spirituals as communication in the field. So some songs would mean, okay, tonight we're gonna meet at midnight and we're gonna escape. We're gonna chop off the master's head and then we're gonna go escape. you know. And so unfortunately, this bastardized religion, we had to use that to get together and to educate ourselves. And I think that's the reason it has held so strong in our societies today, is because of the history. Most of those Black Christian folks in the churches, and I'm one of them, I was raised in the Baptist church. The reason they go to church is because their parents went, not because they had some religious experience, some hallelujah, Holy Ghost experience, but because their parents went, and their parents after them, and their parents before them.
Yeah. Let me just say one thing in direct response to what you said. I am one of those people in America. I only go to church when I'm forced to go by my mom. Since being in England for 3 years, I have not stepped foot into a church. In America, I only go to church if I'm forced to go. I've never voluntarily walked into a church and said, "Hey, I'm here to have fun and pray with you guys." It's always been like, go to church. So just much like the slaves were forced to go to church, I too was forced to go to church, by an attempted parent who still, is like most of us, very, very powerless in this white supremacist dominated society. So I didn't mean to cut you off, man. You can keep going, man.
Oh yeah, thanks for that. And that it's really powerful that we are evolving out of that. But I think it was a necessary step in our evolution for us to get together. Because for me, like I too was forced to go to church. I wouldn't have gone had I not been forced. It's very interesting too that the same tactics, the same way that the
Yeah.
slaves were, and I didn't really connect that, but yeah. But I still think it was an important step to at least open up the idea of of spirituality, of God, and then like I have done, matriculated on to a real understanding of my creation, and what really kind of pissed me off of late is that books like this that were written in when, like the 70s. I think maybe this book was written in the 80s, early 80s. The Miseducation of the Negro was written in 1933. This information and the other book, in the 70s, right? The ISIS papers, right? Why don't they teach what pisses me off is that this information, this literature is not taught in the churches. And it's for a specific reason, because it's going to tell you the truth about the Christian religion. And there'll be a mass exodus from these churches if they start teaching true Black history. So yeah, it's a problem, um, for us as a people to back to uh, get back to, what did it say? Reflective thinking of invention and discovery, and high standards of excellence.
Right. So if you Google Thebes and Google Images, you will see a large number of art that's still there to today. So this is the Avenue of Sphinxes. So if religion was motivating these beings to create such powerful art that's still up today, literally thousands of years later, maybe like Chancellor was saying in a book, hopefully like the next stream of Black writers are understanding key names and key purposes. So what is the purpose of religion? Is the purpose of religion simply to build? Because people are using religion to like cope and numb themselves, and they're not really using it the way I think it's supposed to be used. Look at all these. I'm not sure if this is like real, but this is some more art from Thebes.
It's real.
Um, so fortunate that the image did not pop up. All right, that's all I'm going to share. I just wanted to just give y'all a glimpse. It's just whenever you're trying to learn things, white supremacy, just look at this. I have to turn off my ad blocker to look at a picture of Africa. Um,
Yeah, I wanted to comment on what Ben was saying. I feel that religion and the definition of it, the whole word in general, has changed. It no longer means what it was supposed to mean or what it was, created to mean. I think that how do you go from, religion being a way that you live to it being something you do once a week? I think that because it's changed, like we have a hard time understanding that religion is a way of life, that you're supposed to be living a certain way. If these ancient Africans weren't living the way that they were every day of their life, they couldn't have created art, they couldn't have created music, they couldn't have created song and dance, right? If it's something that they were only doing once a week, that I think that is the definition of the Europeans' religion, where you only do it once a week. Once a week, you go and do your so-called rituals, and you do your praises, and then for the other 6 days of the week, you're tormenting the world and you're torturing the world. You're spreading evil throughout the world, and that's that. So religion now has become, for the European, they're kind of like I don't know, scapegoat, or they're out for all the horrible mistreatment that they do throughout the world. Whereas religion for the African people is, like Ben was saying, a way of life. You know, if we weren't living the way, if religion wasn't a way of our life, then we couldn't have done all the things that we did. I think it even goes on to show, that Black people, he even says in the book, they're so religious. That's why, that was one of the reasons why they fell. And even today, black people, like, religion isn't only one day a week for them. Like, they live that every day still to this day. So they're going to practice, that's the slave religions like Christianity every single day of their lives, because they're such a religious people.
Well, I would love to add to that as well. One of the things too that I notice about like religion in general, from what we're reading and applying it to the European religion, is that one of the things that I do want to mention is that although they do go to church 1 day a week or however many days, I know like in the church they do tell people to like practice on their own. But one of the things that I would like to add in that sense is like, although they are practicing on their own, quote unquote, and then they go to church to get like their feeding from the word or this connection ritual thing, um I just feel like there's some sort of like disconnect, especially since you are getting your knowledge only from one Bible. So it's like, oh, read the Bible and pray about it, and then that's all. Whereas from the book, it's stating that this religion is again a way of life. Like, this is something you live, not something you just do. But the way of life that you live will fuel you to do things, to produce things, and not just, oh, I'm just going to read the Bible today and pray and do my daily devotion, and that's it for the whole day or the whole week, and I'm just going to pray over my food and hope that it's good when I'm going to have a meal, and then possibly pray for others with no intention of their healing. But yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Thanks so much for sharing. I wanted to talk about something that's been coming up a lot lately, in my world at least here in England. Um, art, stolen property, stolen knowledge, actually. So here in England, we have the National Museum of History, we have the British Museum of History, we have the Imperial War Museum. We have all these places full of stolen art. And on page 90, it reads, the early Greeks and Romans eagerly copied from both reshaped them and made them integral parts of an original Western culture. During periods of decline or conquest, Europe and Asia seized and transported from Africa as much of the artifacts of a civilization as they could. Cambyses, for example, as early as the 6th century BC, hauled away over $100 million of precious historical materials from Thebes alone. Cambyses was only one of the countless thousands who invaded the tomb repositories of Black history during each of the many periods of foreign invasion and foreign rule. So they would go into these tombs, take people, their skin, their organs, their jewelry, their art, anything that they could get their dirty, non-melanated hands on, basically. So, and I read that, and I was like, this is also how it has become normalized and very, very expected that Black people have no idea where they come from, no idea who they are, no idea what they're capable of. So when you see a Black person walk down the street, you can assume that they're dumb, because being dumb just means you don't know anything. You know, if you don't know anything about yourself, then you're going to be classified as dumb, and you're going to be assumed to be dumb. And when non-white, non-Black, and when white people see Black people, they are able to understand that this is a people of no history, because they don't know anything about us. And what they do know, they're definitely not going to tell us, because they're either afraid of us or threatened by us. So it's quite the pickle Black people are in. And the fact that our tombs were raided and our cities were raided and our history was taken and put in museums, this also causes confusion. You know, it leaves us, you know, in hopeless states and uneducated states and unaware states. So yeah, and there was a mention of Black people in Thebes having a system where the community gave 10 to 50% of their earnings to the city or the state, or whoever was the governing force where they lived. They gave them money, and then this fund kind of helped those in need. And when I read this, I wrote down, sounds like justice. It sounds like some type of justice that was being cultivated. And I wanted to read, it's from page 92. And it reads, the Central Treasury belonged to the people and was maintained for the people's welfare, not only for public projects, but for the relief of each and every individual in distress whose need could not be met by his family or clan. However, African constitutional law received its first blow in Egypt in the wake of numerous invasions and foreign rule. So whenever Black people are doing anything constructive, you know, people invade and destroy it. So when I read that, I was like, it sounds like justice. During these times before social media and before hashtags, before computers, before screens, before, you know, nuclear war, it seems like Black people were doing amazing things. And it seems like that greatness has been beaten out of us collectively. Individually, Black people are still amazing, I'm sure. I don't know every Black individual, but I'm pretty sure there's still greatness about. But it seems like we were using religion to build, and we were using logic to, you know, set up treasuries to sustain the people who will be building the population. And when I say building the population, I mean physically building it through, you know, hammers and nails and tools, but also through sex, through the reproduction of the self. You know, self is the reproduction of self. So when you have sex with someone and you have a baby, the whole act is supposed to be reproducing. you know, yourself in a way that you pass on your genes and like you don't be forgotten on Earth. Even though I wouldn't really care to be forgotten on this planet is kind of disappointing. Um, so yeah, that concludes what I had down for my notes. We already talked about how we originated the system of philosophy and astrology. So please, if you have anything to share, please do now. I will not.
Thank you so much.
I will not be reading anymore or sharing anything.
Thank you so much, Necklace. I really enjoyed what you had just read there, especially the statement about the Central Treasury belonged to the people and who was maintained for the people's welfare. The idea of that is exactly what I was talking about when I had mentioned that I see a lot of the things that had been successful in the past, in that this history is detailing that Europeans or most European civilization is trying to be built on this welfare system of everybody putting into everybody's pocket. But of course, they found a way for their own 1% or high in the capital to not be able to pay that. But the poorest of the poor are literally paying for whomever and anybody who needs it, especially with our healthcare system over here in the UK, as we fund it ourselves through our taxes and don't really get to decide how it's distributed. And we're constantly seeing youth centers money being taken away from that, and narratives being created more for wayward younger children towards knife crime, despite the fact that you're literally removing from the funding that gives them any form of objective or something to do or construct their time outside of school. And it just shows me how everything has been manipulated and disrespected. Systems that were clearly created with integrity to make sure everybody gets a piece has been remodeled as a form of civilization today, but is you have to be European to kind of be in on it. You have to be amongst the elites to be aware of that scholarship or be aware of that level of funding. You'd see a McDonald's advert on TV 5 times over before you see anything for art funding or access to education or grants being offered. It's like people who are aware. And if you're not somebody who would search this information, this news, you deserve to die with the lack of knowledge that you do not want to attain, and you should just eat McDonald's or whatever is being given to you on the TV. That is literally the programming that I'm seeing today. And I just really want us to be able to really learn from this information that we're receiving here, find ways of pulling it amongst ourselves again, just like that circulation of the Black Pound, keeping it in amongst ourselves, doing it as a digital form now, that until we can establish a firm ground. But yeah, moving forward with action of these. And also I found the part where they talked about the first historians were the professional storytellers and traveling singers. I understand this tradition to still be taken down in some African nomadic tribes and tradition and tribes and religions, countries. I wouldn't even call it religions. I would just say like the Mandingo tribe. They used did jelly singing as which is a form of oral passing down of information. And I used to watch a lot of these growing up. I never understood it, and whenever every time I'd ask my grandma what's being said, it's literally stories of whoever's singing, they're talking about their family members, respecting our elders, respecting nature. So a lot of the things I'll overhear my grandma say is like, oh, that's true, that's true. And I would say, what is being said? And she was like, they're speaking the truth of the world. I never quite understood that until I'm seeing this now, but this shows me that you have a responsibility to learn history. You have a responsibility to take on that knowledge. If you are going to sing, dance, or receive money in any way, shape, or form, the information that you're passing down through this entertainment is of high value and knowledge. It's not selling sex for a little bit of funds. This is it's an expression of history. using your body, mind, and soul. Shows us we should have way more integrity and respect for the spiritual movements that we do. Everything this lets me know, this chapter alone has let me know how spiritual we are as people, and the European has taken this information of understanding the depth of our spirituality and whitewashing it with the European Christian religion, as well as Islam doing its own bidding around West Africa and Sierra Leone as well, and suppressing that exploration. One of the things that I do know in Islam from my grandma is that jelly singers, although they are reverenced and respected, people who sing for money and share history, they're also apparently there's a certain level of disrespect to them. I remember my grandma saying that, oh, our family wouldn't be able to marry anyone in there, and I understood that association being with Muslims saying you can't sing or dance, and I always had it found it very conflicting how in my family tradition we follow a religion, but you do certain things by nature, and I see you do it because it's a part of your culture and history. And I've literally had to like watch my grandma try and be the best Muslim while like she didn't even mention it, but she would not remove her traditional values. She would just maybe talk against them every here and there, but it's not something that I wasn't aware of or not taught through her in, expression of it. So yes, removing the religions that bind us down and really oppress our mentality, and re-in-touching ourselves with that level of expression, as well as regaining the history, so the children that we're teaching today can be fully engaged spiritually as well, and that can become a form of their religion or way they express themselves.
Very well said, Ms. Nebula.
I want to read and comment on this part from, I think it's 91, and it says, "Did anyone's well, I'm just gonna read it. It says, no way goes back beyond the reach of man's record. No other city on earth ever had so many temples, and even today there are more ruins of temples than anywhere in the world because of the splendor of their architectural designs and the colossal size of the structures. They, like the pyramids, became wonders of the world. Religion was not only the immediate occasion for the development of art and architecture, but it also inspired the drive for bigness, the grand design on a scale as huge as human skill and effort could achieve. Nothing less was befitting of the gods. So this is what, just to hammer in what we've been talking about religion. This is what their religion was allowing them to do, but unfortunately, it did not allow them to foresee the threat of white supremacy and prepare them for it, but still have much more constructive value than the so-called religion that black people have today. So please, black people who may happen to be watching this, please replace your religion with producing justice, learning the truth.
Does anyone have anything else to share? If not, we can move to closing comments. Not sure who Rhonda T is.
Oh, that's my friend. I invited her to just come and listen. She bought the book and started reading.
Oh, well, we just had lost a member today. So hopefully, Rhonda, you can replace our member who just jumped ship. Um, yeah, that'd be great. You could be a consistent uh, reader and participant in this study. Uh, so yeah, any. Let me make sure I read everything. I did. Listen, anyone else want to share? Kwaku 0526, Miss Nebula, Benjamin, anything else? It doesn't have to be. You don't have to read from the book. Like anything you want to share in general about what we read.
Yeah, I was looking at something real profound. I just love what I'm trying to get these names right. Mary just shared, and just everything is just so profound. But so right here at the top paragraph on 92, although it's the end of this paragraph, although divine kinship was never widespread over the continent, it seems to be true that the ideas and practices of the divine despots of the Orient did penetrate and influence a number of African kingdoms. So right, even as far back as the times when the back and forth between Upper and Lower Egypt was changing power, uh, this idea of divine kinship, um, that originated in Thebes. It's just fascinating how the civilization was and the religion was taught to the Northerners. And over time, they developed their religion into these political structures. And what the writer is saying in the next paragraph, the point of all this is that religion made the people submissive and obedient. All the more so if their ruler was given a superhuman role, such as kinship with the gods and the protecting ancestors. For did this not mean then that rulers held all the keys to heaven? Indeed, the chiefs and kings had evolved into the very instruments of the people's salvation. So I just think it's real interesting how the religion evolved from something genuine that was there to help the people into something that was there to control the people, um, and to keep the people submissive. And it's like the theme, it's like the golden thread throughout this entire, so far what we've read, is that you have people that were genuinely concerned with spirituality and morality, and their religion and government was all based on that first. And then after, after civilization evolved into this empire building, conquering, controlling kind of system, it changed. It changed from something that was placed for the people to control the people. And that's where the Europeans took off with it. Um, that, because obviously, from what we've read and what we've learned, everything that is in this civilization was modeled after that civilization. Even if you look on the back of the dollar bill, there's a pyramid with a third eye in there, and then there's the eagle. That's the symbol that this is just a straight copy. But what it's like is more so is a cheap, raggedy, dysfunctional knockoff version of the original system that was set up by our ancestors. Now I'll close with that.
Thanks so much. That was fantastic. Thank you for articulating that. I agree.
Thank you.
I agree. Religion certainly has been used for more negative things than good in today's society. I've never seen religion do much for Black people besides give them false hope for a better day tomorrow, without really taking the steps to make sure your day is good tomorrow. Like praying is fantastical, it may make you feel good on the inside, but there needs to be action with prayer. You can't just pray and hope things are going to get better. There has to be action always. And I think I said it earlier, and I'm not gonna, I don't want to repeat myself over and over again, but like I said, religion is more of a sedation at this point.
Yeah, I want. Um, I think it's really a. I forgot what I was gonna say. Never mind.
Um, yeah. So if no one has anything else they want to share, we're gonna move into closing comments. How's that sound?
I'm happy for closing comments.
Oh yeah, I remember now. Yeah, but this is my closing comment. Like what Mary said earlier, and what Mr. Andrews said, that religion has been like tossed upside down and used to control us. Remember what white people did, what we learned from Yugu. Like white people, they started living in the caves and they went to the so-called Africa, and then they started to learn about that black people had this religion, and they looked around them and they got to see all this stuff that black people's religions was allowing them to produce and create. So they created their own religion, but their religion was entirely just for control. There's no actual spiritualness to their religion because it's a fake white copy of black religion. So and that's what we're dealing with now, with a very, very plastic society due to the Yurugu, with no substance in our religion and anything that we do.
I agree. I agree. My closing comments are the history of Africa is very beautiful and full of great triumphs and victories, but the state of Africans and Black people in today's time, right now, to me, are just sad. I think sad and sad and unconstructive. That seems to be the theme of Black people today. Of course, there's pockets of success, but oftentimes people mix success with fame, fortune, and popularity versus how many people are talking about the truth and how many people are talking about the shared reality that we all experience, which is racism, white supremacy, a system that is created to keep us powerless, to keep us in pain, keep us suffering, and keep us in need of white saviors, in need of our long, long natural born enemies. I guess that's what they are now. What they've become. But to close out, I'm really interested in learning more. Reading this book is helping me understand a lot of mistakes that were made by ancient Africans, and I can't control the masses of Black people on planet Earth, but I can definitely individually, dictate my own actions. So I'm hoping to, continue to read this book, and continue to be productive and constructive as I, lead people, myself, and others into, a world where justice is the most powerful energy force on planet Earth versus racism and white supremacy.
Yeah,
Thank
for my
you.
closing. Oh, go ahead, Mary. I mean, my.
Yeah, I was saying thank you, Tracian. That was perfectly said. What I read, Ben's closing comments made me research the word religion. It's true. It was profound to know that when before it was tampered with, our embracing of in religion created civilizations, education, holistic learning, fruit cultivation, knowledge. It just birthed and breathed life. And I looked up the definition, the etymological version of religion, and it's the belief in and worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. If that doesn't sound like white supremacy today, then I don't know what is. The superhuman controlling power. Doesn't sound like Jesus to me. And even in that interpretation of religion, it doesn't make sense. I keep going further down a particular system or faith and worship, a pursuit or interest followed with great devotion. What does devotion look like? Does devotion look like making sure you're there on Sunday? Does devotion making sure our people are free, or like we have been we have been confused. One of the statements underneath it even says consumerism is the new religion, which is what white supremacy would love for us to be our religion, even in our places of worship now, whether you are Muslim or Christian, it all works out the same in the sense of the secular, because they're all being fed by the white supremacist system, so it's containable to a certain degree. And yeah, I just want to free myself from this, and my new religion is one of action, hand in hand with spirituality. So in those meditative prayers, those building of strength through prayer should be fueled with actions that help energize that and not take away from the deep thought, prayer, and meditations that we put into ourselves. Or when you're crying, like literally to God, or just trying to build yourself up, I will not counter that now with destructive actions that make me look more silly when I'm there crying later. So yeah, just walking my steps should be my religion now. And I learned a lot from this discussion, and really appreciate having so many different minds articulate what we're reading together. I could not wait for the next chapter.
Well said. Thank you. For my closing comments, I believe it would be of constructive value for Black people to, learn something about their history in order to eliminate confusion about where they came from. That's coming from Thebes. Understand that we've been creating civilizations much, much older than Egypt. And as far as religion goes, I would urge everyone to understand the difference between religion and when ancient Africans were practicing it and the religion that we're practicing today. I don't believe they're the same thing, or I don't even know if religion would even be the correct word to use to call what ancient Africans were practicing. I think religion today is, it's just trashy, tacky, and terroristic.
Yeah, I want to say that the average Negro must look no further than their own history for a epic, tragic tale of greatness, glory, and something to learn from and use today.
Yep. So religion, redefine it. It's my definition is a way of life or how people live. That's the definition I'm going to use from now on of religion. So if somebody asks me, if I'm religious, I just, that's what I practice every day, how I live. That's my closing comments.
Just one last quick thought. This reading is liberating me, and I think it will liberate young Black, less educated men that are and women that are self-destructing through consumerism and violence as a mode or as a method of status. Since we don't have money, since we don't have jewelry, all of that stuff, you pick up a gun to establish status. And so this takes me back to this same line that I read earlier of the concentration on attaining the highest standards of excellence. That's what this reading is doing for me. It's causing me to be about it, be about my business, taking care of business, quit bullshitting. And the reflective thinking and the invention and discovery. I don't see any reason why, if this is having this effect on me, why it wouldn't have this effect on the youngsters in the hood if they were to get this information. And not just the youngsters in the hood, all Black people would start to do things excellent. Sit down, take the time to read about what kind, for example, if you're going to plant and if you're going to grow food, take the time to read about that particular plant, the location, where it goes, what kind of soil, how much sun it needs, how much water. I mean, we have to do our homework and be about it and take the time to do things excellent instead of being raggedy like they are. Thanks.
Well said, well said. I do believe that's everyone, right? All right. Thank you all